the sentence that says, "And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, seed-bearing plants, fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, seed-bearing plants of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that this was good." That's just what I was sort of focusing on at the moment when you asked.
So it's like the world is good, which is very different from the tradition that Monica and I.
There's a lot of positivity happening here, yeah.
Yeah, like God's
Good stuff.
pretty pleased with himself,
Yeah.
and you'd think that we should also view the world as a good thing, right? It's not.
Yes. Something to be appreciated and cared for and protected and honored.
Yeah, and we're asked to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the bird of the sky, and every living thing that moves on the earth. So, how do you feel about that, ladies? That we're asked to by God to subdue the earth.
Which verse is that?
Chapter 1, verse 28. Sorry, we're asked to subdue the earth.
I wonder how we're supposed to interpret that word and how close that is to the original word and the original meaning of that word.
Well, what word do you have?
I have subdue.
You have subdue?
Yeah.
What do you have?
I think it's often translated as subdue.
And I've got no footnote either, which suggests that there's not that much ambiguity there.
Yeah, that seems pretty blunt.
Well, I mean, if you have to subdue something, that means it's wild and hard to contain and out of control.
It doesn't necessarily mean oppress, or
right.
It just maybe means it to potentially could be interpreted as create order within it, impose order within it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah,
we're asked to impose order on the world.
Yeah, I think that makes sense given that this entire chapter is about order. It's about balance. It's about God said this happened, it was good. The setting and dawning of the first day. God did this, he said this, it's good. Dawning, whatever, of the, setting, dawning, fifth day, whatever. There's an order to things.
It's hard to believe that there are any traditional Jews who are anarchists. Because anarchy and chaos just seems to be the total opposite of the Torah's perspective on life.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems to have a real fear of anarchy and chaos.
But I think some people might, though, believe that anarchy is, or in certain moments, it is. That's the way you go about restoring order again. Because it's, what do you mean by order to begin with? I mean, whose order? And if the so-called order is really, a government or a community or a whatever that's gotten out of control, and that's simply, pretending to be ordered, then maybe some kind of anarchist impulse is necessary to subdue it. I mean, I don't know. It's not that simple. It's not so simple as, chaos, anarchy. I mean, people disagree on what that means. I don't know. I do have trouble with the next verse. I mean, have dominion. Well, the end of 28, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the heavens, and all the things. But just this idea of dominion.
Yeah. By the way, the subdue in my translation is actually the word is translated as master, not subdue, which is interesting because that has a totally different energy to it. That word and implication, master and subdue are so different. But rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky.
So what does master of the world mean to you?
Well, sometimes when people talk about mastering something, I want to master guitar. It means, get really, really, really good at it. So you could kind of interpret fill the earth and master as, use it as well as you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that, but I think it's a very generous reading of it. I like it, though. I do like it.
Because, if you were given an acre of earth, and you was told to master it by your boss.
Kind of like enslave it. Like when I hear master, I think of if master is
Nazis,
a verb to
you're thinking
master.
Nazis. Two-stepping.
I don't think that. I think the history of slavery in America. That's what I think of.
Chef.
To master something.
Maybe I'm just hungry.
But if you to master something, I mean, I think of you have to enslave something. Something becomes enslaved to you if you master it. That's a very negative.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny because I don't have that association with that word.
Interesting. I like your interpretation better.
Like I'm always thinking about how I want to master the guitar, or like master Persian cuisine. Or
maybe I have issues with authority though. So.
No, but I do too.
Okay.
Trust me.
How about subdue? Do you ladies use the word subdue? Relate to the word subdue?
I don't know that that's a word I use.
What I thought of when we were talking about the word subdue was my dog and how I have to subdue him.
Yeah.
For,
I think that's what the
for his own
Torah's asking
right,
us.
and it doesn't mean that I break him or that I, chain him up or lock him in a little crate and keep him there all day. It just means that I am in charge. It's sort of like God saying, "All right, I made this for you, and now you're in charge of it. So take good care of it. Master it, figure out how it works. Figure out how to cultivate it and keep it blooming."
Yeah, I like that better.
Monica, you said we skipped the good stuff when I went to 28. So what are your favorite sections of chapter 1?
26. God said, "Let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness."
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so first of all, who is us?
Is that just the
Right.
royal we?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
what does yours say?
Let us make
Okay.
man in our image. After
But so yours
our
says
likeness.
man.
Let's make
Man,
man
yes.
in
Mine
our
says
God said,
humankind.
let us make man.
Mine says humankind, and this goes back to Rashi will affirm my interpretation here, or my explanation here, right? Because the word here, the Hebrew word that was used, was not one for man. It's one that implied sexual ambiguity, not sexual ambiguity, but like a hermaphroditic. It's like a dual-gendered being.
And that was even before.
That's coming. I'm getting that from Rashi, from my little art scroll
well,
photocopies.
this is before Eve. So can there be gender?
Right, there's
only,
not. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Do you need to have that contrast?
But then in 27, so God created humankind in His image. In the image of God, did He create it? Male and female, He created them.
Yeah, God created
It's like
man.
there is one creature that's
Man-
dual
yeah, that's
gendered. Okay.
So it's sort of like He pulls them apart when He creates Eve, rather than
right. It's like
creating one from the
I
other.
think this is Rashi, where there are two sides,
Right.
and then in Genesis 2, they're actually just like split. It's not like a rib coming out of the man and
Right.
creating a woman. It's
like the
an
yin and the
equal-
yang being pulled apart
Exactly.
into two separate entities.
Exactly.
Borrow from a different philosophy.
I mean, because Genesis 2 is going to contradict this. I mean, it's going to tell a different version of
Right.
the creation narrative.
So why? Why the two, right back to back, the two sort of different...
I mean, it's different writers. It's people who come along and say, well, that doesn't tell the whole story. Either I want to explain what happened further because, well, that doesn't really tell us how men and women came to be. So then somebody comes along and writes Genesis 2 explaining how men and women came to be. Or it's somebody who doesn't like this image of male and female equality.
And equal parts, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, but if each creation is a higher rung of creation, I mean, before man it was the animals, before man it was the plants, so we're always getting higher and higher. According to you, the author who's not so into male-female equality has now made women the apex of creation.
One could argue that.
Yeah.
But that's also used, I mean, that's an argument that's also used as a disservice to women. Oh, as the pinnacle of God's creation, we need to protect you. You can't read from Torah. You don't need, I mean,
Right,
I
you're
think that
already
it can
perfect.
become...
You don't have
Right,
to study. Yeah.
right, and I
Yeah.
think that's...
That is not pleasing you.
It's not
so
sincere.
If man was created out of you and man was
Yeah.
then the apex of creation, you'd have
I
a problem
don't
with that
like-
too.
the man being the apex or the woman being the apex of creation. I like this right here, 26 and 27.
Why don't
That's
you
enough.
like?
That's